Well, let's get into it. Martyrs and Mercies. This is really a sermon series on the witness of sacrifice. Not the witness of, I am at a conclusion in my life, a place in my life that I've been successful. I'm going to tell you about all the great things that are happening. We're asking the question, can you share your witness, the martyrdom, the witness of things that have been hard for you as you go through life? Let's do a quick review on what we've been talking about. A witness is the actual definition of martyr. We're shifting from Thomas to martyr to be a martyr in the right sense, which is be a witness, doing the sacred work. Now, being the martyr is somebody who feels like, I do all this, nobody appreciates it. Well, the actual act of sacrifice to the martyr is sacred work. So when it comes to your actual work, when it comes to serving your family, when it comes to taking a little extra time to listen to somebody and their challenges that they're facing, you will see that as sacred space. It doesn't just happen in the sanctuary. Remember, we're kingdom builders. So everywhere we go and we do God's work, we allow ourselves that sacrifice to do the sacred work. We're an example to that person of what kingdom work is like. We're blessing that space. Believe it or not, you're making that space holy. So when you do it at work, when you do it at home, I'll give you another little tidbit. Your home is a micro church. Right? So church being the ecclesia, the gathering, the early church fully believed that the home was also a church, an ecclesia. It's just a microcosm of the larger church. It was supposed to be intended on family. It was supposed to be based around prayer, about wisdom and grace, about sharing in God's word together. Right? We sort of outsource that. We're like, well, let the church do that. And then we go home, we're in common space. You're like, no, God intends the whole universe to be his holy space. You create that when you allow for your family to be a church, the ecclesia, a sacred dwelling. And that's the sacred work you do with your family. And hopefully, so you young people as well, you are practicing your faith and being an example for others in faith. I use, I think, the NIV, faith in life and love and speech and in purity. A great verse to memorize. Well, let's get into it today. Here's your last of characteristics or of your witness. The best and finality of your witness is in death. I'm not asking you to go and die today, but I am going to ask you today to reflect on death. And if you've lost a loved one, especially recently, this will be a little bit of an emotional pull. I get that. But I'm not going to immediately skip to the spirituality of death in the death of Jesus Christ and our spiritual salvation. We will get to that. But I want to have a conversation about the act of death for us all. Now, let me start by asking you this question. What do you want to do before you die? Tell your neighbor. What is one thing you want to do before you die? All right. What'd you guys share? Give me something over here. Amy, what'd you say?
I don't have a neighbor.
Nobody's next to you? Yell over to Jill. Jill! Tell you what I want to do before I die. The worst is if anybody says something that's a little bit off character, like somebody's like, I won't throw the worship team out there, but I'm going to throw them out there. I want to live my life without killing my spouse before I die. You know, like that's survival. Don't shout that out. What else? What'd you guys say? Jenna, Malie, what'd you guys say? What do you want to do? You're like, I have a long time. What do you want to do?
I said go to another Morgan Wallen concert, but...
Another what?
Morgan Wallen.
Gesundheit. Okay, she wants to go to somebody's concert. Okay, what do you got, Aaron? I want to retire before I die. That's good. Matt?
Watch our daughter.
Finally, we're getting a little more spiritual here. You like want to watch our kids grow. We want to watch them. Yep. Yes. Get married, get baptized, do the things of life that you celebrate. In the back, I shared about my grandkids. I'd love to see them baptized. You know, that would be special. It'd be such a moment to see. I want to see even the grandkids get married. Forgive me if you're over 85, but my wife and I kind of joke that's our over-under because of where we were at in our life with our kids. I'm sure when I'm 85, I'd like to live to be 86. But I'm like, I think you're playing with house money, right? If I get my kids grown and baptized and so forth. And you hope to die of old age. But here, now some of you might have said some cool stuff, some fun stuff. Somebody said go to the Grand Canyon. Maybe there's some places. I want to challenge you today. Why not do it? What are we waiting for? And there's some of the things you have to wait for, but there's other things that you didn't even do some personal edification, right? What do you want to do? I'll be full disclosure. I wrote down when I turned 50, I want to write a book a year. Never to get published. I don't even care, but if it did, great. But I want to write because I think there's stories to be told. And I always have these starter ideas, and I never follow through, and I preach them. And then I have all this stuff I've written, and I never compartmentalized it to say, maybe this is something that would be a full package of insight, right? Even for my kids later on. So that's a personal thing, right? How do I make that? Well, the reality is I have to start today, and I'm going to challenge you today that we think of death in sort of the distant future, and everything our society says is put it off, put it off, put it off. Don't think about it. You can have the eternal youth. You can live younger. There's all kinds of medicines. There's all kinds of treatments. There's all kinds of things that distract you. And yet, once you're born, you truly were born with one common goal for every human being: to die. I know some of you Bible scholars be like, there's 2 people in the Old Testament that died. You can go there. But truly for us, we know there's a time to die. When I do a funeral, I have these three scriptures I put in the start, in the middle, and at the end, almost the same every time. There is a time to be born and a time to die. I want to share with you, Becca Johnson writes on Substack, and he works at a grocery store. It's amazing how somebody who is in that common space has such great wisdom to our everyday lives. Listen to what he wrote about an elderly woman who was in his grocery store. He says, you don't expect the grocery list to break your heart until it does. I was filling shelves on the baking aisle when I noticed her, an elderly woman, clutching a handwritten grocery list that looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. She kept glancing at it and then at the shelves and then back at her list, as if the list itself might change if she stared at it long enough. I asked if she needed help, and she gave me a small, tired smile. Oh, but I do, she said. But it's silly, really. I assured her it wasn't silly. She exhaled and held up the list, and I took it, and she said, my husband always did the shopping. Always. 53 years, but he passed away a few months ago, and I don't even know where half the things are. Her voice quivered at the end, like she wasn't sure if she should be embarrassed or if it was okay to admit how heavy this moment was for her. I smiled gently. So let's find them together. And we did. We went aisle by aisle, checking off each item. She told me stories as we walked. The way he always got the wrong kind of peanut butter, how he swore by a certain brand of pasta, how he used to complain about the price of eggs, but always bought them anyway. At one point, we passed the snack aisle and she picked up a bag of his favorite pretzels. She turned it over in her hands and hesitated, and then she put it in the cart. That's silly, isn't it? She said. No, I said. It's love. By the time we reached the last item, she looked me inside. Thank you, she said. I was really dreading this, but you seem to make it easier for me. Anytime. As she walked toward the checkout, I heard the mumble under her breath, half to herself and half to him. I did it, love. Here's the thing. We think too often that death is something to avoid in discussions and conversations. I do funerals with non-believers who want it to be as fast and quick as possible. I honestly have people say, we don't want to be there long. Can you just make it simple? Can you make it quick? We're so afraid of grief that we don't even take time to understand why it's necessary. Why reflecting on death gives us so much more meaning in life. And I want to reiterate this a little bit more intently today. When you die, I've had people tell me what they want me to say about them. You will not care. Nobody cares when they go to heaven or hell. It's too late. The reason you reflect on what people are going to say is because it motivates you now to live differently. If it doesn't, you need to stop thinking about it, because what you want people to say won't be something you hear. The funeral is for the living, not for the dead. But if you pay attention to death and you think about it and you wonder what people will say about you, you might then appreciate life. So in that, we reiterate and echo Paul when he said, did I run the race? Did I press toward the goal to win the prize to which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus? My dad turned 83. He's in a nursing home. I want to say since 2015, my wife and I have experienced 10 years we went through, and it's coming out on the other side, but it was a crucible of times, and the time after time. We lost my sister, and she passed away on September 9th, 2015. And at the onset of that, several things began to happen. We faced some challenges, both here with the church, with family, and then ultimately my wife's dad passed away, and we moved them down. And then my mother suffered dementia. We moved them down. My mom actually passed away, and with the timing allowed, we had her service on my sister's anniversary of her death, September 9th, 2023. I used to think when I was a young pastor that these were things that other people experienced. Maybe if you're young here today, you've not lost anybody close to you. But I think in that personal experience, it reminds me in a good way to make the most of this life. Like when you start to accept that everything comes to a disastrous conclusion, you live differently. You stop living in denial. When you realize that your body's going to get weaker. I remember when I got tennis elbow a few years ago, my arms just don't work. I used to be a man of strength. I mean, I'm not going to say I was like bullish strength, but my kids always are like, Dad is strong, Mom is sweet. You know, like that was like, in other words, Dad's not sweet, right? And then my wife would be like, I'm strong. Like, you're strong emotionally, that's for sure, but they're not asking you to open the can, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not going up to my wife going, hey, can you open this? Right? But now, Tara looks at me, she goes, can you open this? And I go, Joe, open this. We're not as young as we used to, is it? Because you realize it sort of peaks early. Why has God set that up, right? Why is it you're the strongest in like your 30s? What? And then all of a sudden it's like the rest of your life is just trying to survive, right? Like I'm at the age now where I have to have somebody spot me if I change a light bulb. Just hold that step stool, would you? Don't let me die. Your bones get weaker. Your body is more susceptible to disease. Listen to me very closely. If you have it, you will lose it. And I know that's terrifying, but church, if as Christians, we want to hold on to this life so tightly, we will lose it. But rather, if you enjoy it and appreciate it, even in its fragility, you will have it abundantly. When I say you have it, you will lose it. If you have a career, you will eventually end that career. If you have cool stuff, you will lose that stuff. I wish I could, my wife's not here, maybe she's watching on Facebook Live. I wish I could convince her we lose it all. Why do we have 47 bins in the attic? Does anybody else like that? I'm giving you permission. Go through them. Get rid of it. No! But Becca's first grade coloring from art class is in that bin. It does make her heart happy. Which is why I'm talking about when she's not here, Lacey. We're not here. We're not to poke that. I watched Mel Gibson talk about his house, lost in the Palisade fires. He spoke with this wisdom. God gives and God takes away. He says, as Matthew 6:26 says, you just can't worry. You spend your life trying to save the things that mean something to you, only to find out that it slips through your fingers. It's a false sense of security to believe that what you will have forever. There are things you will not take with you. But we live in a culture that sort of puts off the very thing we know we all will eventually share. And I will tell you that there are ways in our culture we do prepare for the worst. Societies show their true colors by how they prepare for crisis. We build fire departments to prepare for fires. Now think about that. It's not if a fire, but when. We build police departments to prepare for disruptions. People that will rob and take away a sense of innocence. The shadows of death. We build hospitals to prepare for sickness. Like, we know this stuff happens, we just don't think it would happen to us. Those things are for other people. And if you're an older person here, you're going to be in the same space when I say this. And I say this with great compassion because I've lived this with my own parents. The single greatest thing for an elderly person to give up is their car keys. It's true. It's the beginning of the end. If I can't drive, I'm relegated to the care of other people. The next thing is the independence of their home, if they can't live at home anymore. And we have seen this slowly progress. If I can't live at home anymore, I'll go to assisted living. If I go to assisted living, the only next thing for me is the nursing home. And if I go to the nursing home and you ask someone what the next place is for them, they will tell you the funeral home. It is the conclusion of life. And everyone here hopes that God will take you in your sleep when you are 99, 105, and you've had your health the whole time. But if we're honest, we see the shadows of death in our existence, letting us know everything decays, everything becomes less, everything becomes harder. The martyr, the witness, the sacred living, in stark contrast, is the person who lives by faith through death. Not up to, through. We get mad at God when the odds finally catch up with us, as if we would never. We play a game with the youth where we put the blindfold on and we play minefield, and they have to step without stepping on a mine, and then they have to start over. And we believe that somehow in life we would get through life and never have cancer, and never lose loved ones, never have divorce, never have suffering, never having estranged relationships with our adult children, because we think when they're children we'll never have this separation. But as you get older, you lose strength. You have physical disabilities. You have arthritis. You have a diagnosis. No matter how much money we spend, no matter how much technology and medicine is developed, the day we are born is the beginning of the end. And every life ends in death. Now, I know that sounds stark, but let me share with you how it gives you a different perspective in life. King David said it best. You've never read the psalm probably in this way. And this is an old adage of the psalm. There's so many different ways to read it, but it truly is a marvel of a stanza, of a poem. Because where he places the verse is so familiar to us. And so in the middle of a funeral, when I mention this verse, it's intentionally placed in the middle because it's intentionally placed in the middle of the psalm. Listen to how David tells the story. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He remembers being a child of innocence, never suffering, right? We wish we could go back to that of our childhood. Certainly a childhood of innocence that can go play and never feel like you're going to get hurt. Like kids are shocked when they scrape their knee. Because you want them to just have such innocence and a vivacious life. David looks back. Remember that. I was a child and you are my shepherd. Not that I was the shepherd, but I was the sheep and you're the shepherd. And because of you I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures. You lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul. You guide me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And then right in the middle of this psalm, he says, but yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It is intentionally in the middle of the psalm. I'll fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And now where does David go? Because if death was the end of the psalm, the end, it's over. But David pivots from the valley of the shadow of death into a place and presence with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. But you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. And I will what? Dwell in the house of the Lord forever. How you live your life with death in full view is how others will remember you. Let me say that again. How you live your life not in denial, but in full view of death is how you will be remembered. And that witness, that martyrdom, that testimony. Let me challenge you this way. We live in a culture that wants to pretend it's never going to happen. We want to bubble wrap our kids. We don't want anybody to get hurt. We don't ever want to face the challenges of this life. And if you have an immature Christian faith, you actually will pray that God will make sure that that happens. And that is never going to happen. We can't avoid it. You can only hope that God keeps you healthy for a time, that your loved ones live a long and healthy life. But if you're married and you have a wonderful marriage, my wife and I have said it jokingly, and we will say it sincerely. We know we're not going to both die together. One of us will go first. And one of us is going to have to see the other one in that coffin to say goodbye. So what do we do? I invite you in this week to stop the numbing. I ask you this week, will you take life as precious as it is and wring it out? For every ounce you can get out of it in this life as it prepares you for the next. Take every moment and ask yourself a personal audit. What am I pretending in my life that I should stop pretending? What am I not saying that I should start saying? In sports, they say, leave it all out on the court, leave it all on the field. Because you know it is impending, it is going to happen. So what makes you live differently today? And anybody here who's faced the shadows of death knows how you live differently because of how close it came. Now, I'm not asking you to take crazy risks. I don't want you to go skydiving and throw the parachute out and then jump out after it. But I am inviting you to go skydiving, right? Let me say it differently. This year, our mission, our vision this year is to do something new. Try something new. Feel a different purpose in life, a greater purpose in life. Extend yourself into a deeper presence of God. Because you know this life is short. I shared with the first service the way that I illustrate this. And listen how powerful this is. This is the inversion of what I'm talking about. The Bible is 66 books, and I'm going to separate before sin. You ready for this? This is the Bible before sin. This is the Bible after sin. The Bible before sin, dealing with sin, is this whole chunk. Do you want to know what's going to happen when we die? This was our life. This is eternity, and it's infinite. And think about that. We think of this life in its totality as if it's the most important thing, and yet God is positioning us to say, well, what you do in this life, get the most out of it because you're preparing for this life. That when you die, you have eternity. David didn't put In the shadow of death, the end, he said, the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And after death, I get this great preparation from God. A dinner, a meal, a presence. I usually end a sermon with this verse. Do not let your hearts be troubled, believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many, many rooms. For not so, I would not have told you. I am going there to prepare a place for you. If I go to prepare a place for you, I will come back so that you may be where I am. So ask yourself, how much time do you spend avoiding the shadows of death? Starvation mentality, keep everything safe, keep everything bubble wrapped, health aid, more medicines, more treatments, more pills, none of which is bad if you're using it to live a better, fuller life. But less risk, less exploration. These are the things that we live in fear. I talk to people now who want less community. Why? Because when I'm with others, I might get sick. Yes, you might. But are we giving up community because we're afraid of getting a cold? Oh, there's bad stuff going around. I get it. Do you want your life to be lived so safe because you're so afraid of death or the shadows of death that you never truly live? Don't you remember Tim McGraw's song? I went skydiving, Rocky Mountain climbing. I went, yeah, you guys know, Fu Manchu. Now listen, and I loved deeper, and I spoke sweeter. I gave forgiveness I've been denied. And I hope someday you get the chance to live like you were dying. Jesus said, I go and prepare a place for you, that when I'm ready for you, I'll come back. You may be where I am. There is something beyond death. This season of life is not to live in fear of the next. I did a funeral for a non-believer, and I've done this several times, one in particular. That was the finality. That was the last chapter. That's all they would ever know. And then I do a funeral for a maturing believer, and the family says, we get it, we mourn now, we suffer today, but imagine where we'll be with them on the other side of that curtain. Christians, we are the ones who are not afraid of it. We see it. We call it out. And we live differently because of it. And we live differently knowing what's on the other side of it. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? If you're here this morning and you've let Jesus sort of be on the shelf, you've let it be an ideology, I'm encouraging you today to do something new. Embrace him. Make it your own. Let him be the eternal life that sees you on the other side of death, a place that he's preparing for you. Believe so confidently in it that you can live this life more boldly. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be sad when crisis strikes. And you shouldn't take all measures to live a better life and to be prepared and be as independent for as long as you can. But truly, squeeze every last drop out of that day. Don't wait to pray with your husband or your wife. Don't wait to have honest conversations with your kids. Don't wait to have that moment at work. Don't wait for the nudging of the Spirit to be the next day or the next day. Ring it out today. Knowing that you as a believer make more out of this life when you understand death and you're